Hey everyone, we are the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are exceptionally welcome to our coverage here of The Handmaid's Tale. We'll get back to that in a minute. We are good doctors of social science. Basically, we are taught how to ask questions, notice patterns, and teach those patterns. We do this around culture, both popped and lived, in an effort to help people live more empathetic and inclusive lives. We talk about everything from size inclusivity or lack thereof in Bridgerton to what we can learn from Hulu's recent documentary series on the history of the gay rights movement. We love having conversations, obviously, but we turn on the recording devices for y'all because we love to have them for you as well. So wherever you are listening to this or watching this, we would love your feedback and thoughts. There's ways to get a hold of us below in the show notes, either of the podcast that you're listening to or the YouTube video that you are watching.
We are here with our OG Good Doctors content, The Handmaid's Tale, episode by episode. Thoughts and feelings, mostly rants for seasons 3 and 4. We're up to season 4, episode 8, entitled Testimony. Episode 7 was entirely in Canada. This one jumps back and forth between Canada and Gilead. In Canada, we get some real problematic stuff from our very, very traumatized June Osborne. Shout out to one of our YouTube commenters who said, there's a difference between acceptable feelings and acceptable actions.
Oh, I love that terminology.
And I'm forgetting that person's name. It's either Amy or April, because I know those were the two comments. So hopefully Amy or April, whoever commented, you feel recognized. So it was 2 A's right in a row in the algorithm. But I love that distinction of acceptable feelings and acceptable actions. We get a lot of acceptable feelings from our June in Canada, both with the Handmaid's Tale survivor group and her testimony, which was massive, and we'll get to that. We don't get a lot of acceptable actions from our June. In Gilead, Lydia is like losing it. Who knows? She uses a cattle prod on a very docile handmaid and an aunt. Lawrence has to pull the reins back into her, and then we find Janine. Where's Janine? Janine's back in Gilead. She's captured in Chicago, and Lawrence sends her to torture Janine, to do something with her. It's phenomenal acting between those two women again. But we don't know what's happening with Lydia and Janine. We kind of leave that situation very murky. And we end in Canada with a pretty horrific scene in the Handmaid's survivors group. I have subtitled this episode, "Are There Any Counselors in Canada?" which you may recall was also my subtitle for episode 7. I would like to reiterate that statement. We end with a very, very disturbing peer-pressured peer group where June is forcing her acceptable emotions onto other people, and her decision to then tell Luke about the last time that she saw Hannah, which I'm not sure she did out of kindness, because I don't think in her traumatized state she's doing anything out of kindness, but we'll get more into that. So those are the haps from testimony. Dr. Kristen, the floor is yours. Ominously. What would you, as I lose my voice, what would you like to say?
I am aware that they want to tell a very specific story with June. It is so far removed from a story about trauma survival in a way that feels cohesive, informed at all, or kind, that it's very difficult for me to kind of understand where they're going. We covered a lot of this in our live with Dr. Nadine Thornhill, and we were significantly less calm. So if you were, we're going to come in hot on this for sure, because we're still pretty hot. But if you would like even more fiery good doctors, make sure to check out that content. It will be linked in the show notes for those of you who are catching up, potentially not in June of 2021, where everything is still very, very fresh for all of us.
Super fresh.
Super fresh for all of us.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of trauma survivors. I am personally a trauma survivor. I have worked with lots of survivors of sexual violence. Obviously, no Gileadian survivors, but there's a lot of research out there that explains how people behave. And there's a lot of ways to tell the story they're telling. And just full stop, I don't think they know what they're doing as the writers, because everything is so haphazard that you actually can't tell the difference between acceptable actions and acceptable thoughts, because there's so much ricochet. All of that to be said, of the three kind of categories of this show, of this episode in my mind, which is Gilead, the testimony, and the survivors group.
Yeah.
The testimony was some of the best writing this show has ever done.
It was phenomenal.
It was brilliantly acted. It was brilliantly shot and staged, down to Fred's interruption. All of that made sense. And with the Luke that they have given us, it makes sense that he would have shown up explicitly against June's wishes. It infuriated me that he did, but the way that it's like we got very, very angry that they have given Luke no resources at all to cope with trauma himself or to cope with a traumatized wife. But since they haven't, this completely fits character that he would do this.
Yeah, I agree.
So that whole scene, still don't know where Serena got her pregnant wife costume or why they were allowed to wear the costumes of their regime. Not entirely sure why they weren't forced to wear civilian clothing. Questions around that, but
lots of questions.
Overall, that segment was impeccable.
Yeah.
The Gilead bits, like, I'm just confused generally. I don't really know what we're doing, where we're going, anything else. And then I can conservatively talk about the dumpster fire of offensiveness that was the survivors group for somewhere around 6 weeks. So before I start on that rant, do you have anything, like, what do you want to say about either the testimony or Gilead?
I think you brought this up in the live, but I think it's important to note again that, like, the testimony was the first time that June had explicitly been asked for her consent for things.
Yeah.
Since she, like, from the judge, the Waterford's lawyer then also tries to make it out that June consented to what happened to her in Gilead, because
this is a very typical thing for defense attorneys to do to survivors. Larry Nassar's attorney did the same thing.
Exactly. But speaking of Larry Nassar, I did, while you were just talking there about the testimony, it reminded me so much of the shots from the victim impact statements in Larry Nassar's trial.
Especially Allie Reisman's. Yep.
Yeah. And so it was just really powerful and emotive, and I'm glad they filmed it the way that they did. It is one of the best scenes from the show, full stop, and definitely from this season. We talked about this in the live, so I won't beat this already dead horse too much, but we don't know what they're doing with Aunt Lydia's character, especially since we know what Lydia is in the testaments, which is written as a course correction. We're not sure, but for a more extensive discussion of the testaments, you can see our live, but I'm confused as to what's happening there, except for the continued presence of Bradley Whitford. I never find that confusing. We do get some great Bradley Whitford, Josh Lyman, Commander Lawrence. He is all three of those things all the time. June knows how to make people like her. People don't like you. Call a spade a spade. Commander Lawrence, it was brilliant. The final thing I want to mention before we get to the Handmaid's Tale survivor group is what we see happen when the Waterfords are going to trial the day after the testimony.
Oh, great point. Great point.
That I found in my notes as I was scrolling. Because this is a huge part of our discussion that we've been having about where this show is going. Eventually, we're all presuming leading to the destruction of Gilead as a state. But as we have said, June's like burn it all down, destructive reaction, while an acceptable emotion, we do not feel is a viable action.
It's not even that's not viable. It will not get her what she actually wants.
It will not get her what she wants. Yeah. And like,
well, pause. Actually, sorry to in these episodes, she essentially just wants Serena and Fred to be punished. So it will get her what she wants.
It will get her what she wants. Sure.
So that's an incorrect statement on my part. It will not I don't think it will to the extent she thinks it will.
And I don't think she can see past her trauma, which I don't blame her for, because she is possibly the most traumatized character I've ever seen on television. But that's why she shouldn't be the one in charge of making these decisions right now.
All those are great points.
But what I wrote in all caps as we watch Serena and Fred leave the, like, why they have so much freedom we can get to, why they're allowing them to dress in very politicized clothing when aren't they on trial for war crimes?
Yeah, this is an IOC trial. They just, yeah. I'm going to guess, aren't taking them to The Hague because of COVID.
Yeah, like we wanted this to be in The Hague. We talked about it last season. But this is their international criminal court trial.
Yeah, they should be in shackles.
Why are they wearing and like we all know clothing in Gilead is hyper politicized. Why is he allowed to wear his military uniform?
I have no idea. I have so many questions.
So many questions. But anyway, they're walking to the car, like not shackled, free to move. And they see what they assume are protesters. And as soon as they get closer, they are actually supporters. And that is when I wrote in all caps, the idea of Gilead is harder to destroy than the state.
The idea of Gilead has been around for as long as there's been humans.
Yeah.
Like fundamentalism is a constant part of the human experience.
Uh-huh.
So
especially in times of economic downturn, and even like it is used as a way to explain trauma. Mm-hmm. And massive societal change. And we all know that the fertility crisis was one of the catalysts for this incarnation of fundamentalist cult stroke state.
Yep.
And it is very clear that there are people in Canada who see Serena's pregnancy as a miracle, as an act of God.
Yeah, if y'all don't think that in like normal, that if this was happening, that there would be like Facebook fan sites for Serena Waterford. I have bad news for you folks.
So many. And like we criticize the show creators and the show writers a lot, but fair dues for them for writing that, because that is, I think they understand that their fan base is not big Gilead fans.
I think they understand Gilead. I just don't think they understand June. But I think they've always understood, well, no, Nadine would like us to say that Gilead changed a lot. But I think they've understood this dichotomy of the idea versus the state all along.
All along.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important. I actually love that they're bringing it up and that they might be going down that road. As much as we would, in our heart of emotional hearts, just love to see the burning down of all that is Gilead. As social scientists, we know that's not how movements are stopped or destroyed or governments taken down, especially when the idea is so powerful. And you cannot underestimate the power of Serena's pregnancy right now, that holds to that idea. And that the Waterfords can wield it as evidence that they have followed God's path, as Fred said when he interrupted the testimony, and they are being rewarded. So hat tip, show writers, we often yell at you. I'm not. I'm giving you the thumbs up. But that's what I wanted to say about that. Let's talk about the survivors group.
Nothing that happened in that group is okay.
Is okay. Absolutely not. Nothing.
Nothing.
Zero. Zilch.
Really, that's it. That's all I have to say. Like, like we can leave it at that.
There's no way.
I want to just open up my mouth and let bees come out.
There is no way Moira should be in charge of that.
Moira should not be in charge of that because Moira's trauma is not. So my speaking coach always says that if you're going to talk about a very painful story, you have to speak about it from your scar and not from the wound. And I think that's a really great summation of a lot of things. Like, if you're going to lead a survivors group, you need to lead from your scar and not your wound. And Moira has showed us 6 ways to Sunday that everything is still scar tissue. It's like everything is still wound. Sorry, it hasn't gotten there yet.
And that's totally fine. That's why she shouldn't be in charge.
Why she shouldn't be in charge. And if you want to tell me that you don't have like the actors or the money or whatever, just take one of those handmaids and make her a social worker. It's really not that
yeah, we didn't know any of those handmaids.
Didn't know a single one of them because we've killed every handmaid that we've known. Thought process. So the bringing of the aunt was abominable.
It was such a violation of Emily's wishes and consent and emotions. And
we talk about it a lot in the live. So again, for anyone who joined us, who was able to join us for both, just want to be really clear that if June did that in a kind of normal survivors group, she would be kicked out.
Yeah.
Real quick. I hate that she publicly used the word mutilated about Emily, and we have no confirmation that that is a word Emily takes for herself.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, then when the aunt dies by suicide, the way the filmmakers shot, I am entirely confused by. I don't know why she got the angelic music she got. I don't know why she got the camera angle she got. I don't understand any of that. The one thing that us and everybody on the live agreed upon was at the end of the scene when Emily says that she was happy the woman was dead, that was about appeasing June.
Yeah.
My guess is that it's all still too fresh for Emily to know what she actually thinks about it. She probably thinks 7 things about it, but the people who understand June the best in a way are Moira and Emily, and that there are times you have to give in to her.
Yeah.
Because she will bulldoze you as she just did. Now, I, of course, were I friends with Moira and Emily, would be like, walk the hell away. Just walk away. Just walk away. And I would help pay for their therapy so that they could, in fact, walk away.
Walk away.
Fiction, and we need both of them to tell June's story, so I respect that that's why that's not happening. Also because the show is in love with June. But as a human person, I was offended by June's actions. Yeah. As a trauma survivor, I was offended by June's actions. As a trauma advocate, as a social worker, again, I just wanted to drop my jaw and let bees come out. Like, I was so incandescently angry. That's all I really have to say. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Every single piece of it was terrible.
Yeah. And like, I don't know where they're going with this version of June, with the show, because they clearly want to show us that she is fallible, that she is traumatized and hurt, and that people disagree with her. They've shown us several times explicitly this season, especially even Moira and Emily, who are 2 of the people that know her best in the world, know that she just bulldozes, that she just makes decisions and doesn't think about consequences, and she is not a planner. She is a reactionary, all of those things. But then the show also wants us to believe that June is the savior.
Mm-hmm. And you can't have it both ways, chicken.
And she can't be both things. She can't be a destructive fireball of trauma that she has come by honestly. She cannot be both that and the savior of these people and or Gilead and or Hannah. Like, and I think it was Nadine that brought it up in the live, but for me, she was like, she's 2 different versions and she can't be both. So pick one and tell that story, but they're trying to have it both ways. And it's narrative whiplash, and it's not going well, because then it just makes it look like they don't know what they're doing, which I don't think they do. And doing a disservice to Elizabeth Moss, who, as we said in episode 7 and in this episode, just hand her the Emmys. Give her a special Emmy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she is so mind-numbingly good at her job. And then the show gives her character such crap to work with. That's what my last note for this episode was, make it make sense.
Yeah, we've got 2 episodes left of this season. Who knows where we're going, but we'll be with you.
But we'll be here. Wherever we are going, we will be here with you.
We will be here with you. So our hope for you is that nobody accosts you in a survivors group between now and when we see you again, or ever. And we will, in fact, see you for episode 9.
Bye, everybody.